If you live in a state that bans high-capacity magazines, we're going to show you your 7 best handgun choices. So buckle up. Hi everybody, welcome to the LocaCarnivore. Glad you could join us today. Like we said in the intro, we're going to tell you about the 7 best handgun choices if you happen to be an unfortunate soul who lives in a state which bans normal capacity magazines. So we'd have to talk about what are the choices you have for a handgun to defend your life, defend yourself and your family in this kind of environment, that kind of regulatory environment. Well, the first question you need to ask yourself if you're in one of these places is, what is the maximum allowable capacity for your handgun magazine? And another thing you need to ask yourself is, you got to make sure you're going to give us a big like on the video. We really appreciate your support on that. We want you on the LocaCarnivore team, so please subscribe. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you won't miss any of our great videos. Well, with that out of the way, moving along, there are 13 states at the moment in the United States which have magazine capacity caps. I'm just going to call it a cap. It's a ban of things, of higher capacities or whatever, but there's a cap. There's a limit to how many rounds you can carry in your gun at one time. And the vast majority of those, with the exception of 3 outliers, the vast majority of those cap your magazine handgun capacity, whether it's a magazine, cylinder, whatever, at 10 rounds. The 3 outliers are Colorado, Vermont, and Delaware. Delaware, oddly enough, has 17, and then Colorado and Vermont for handguns have a limit of 15. Now, even if you're in these 10-round max states, you still have a fairly good choice. And the guns that I'm going to point out to you are not the only options out there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that would fit the bill, but I'm going to just talk about the ones that, I think are probably pretty good choices for most people in most situations. And the other thing that's really good for our situation here at LocaCarnivore is a little support on our Patreon. We do have the link in the description. Go over there, show us love. We'd appreciate it. Also, while you're at it, if you want more content, we have a website, LocaCarnivore.com. And if you could go over there while you're there, ring the link's down in the description, of course. And then while you're there, touch on the little tab at the top of the screen that says store, and you can get in there and get some great LocaCarnivore merchandise, great gift ideas, just saying. Now, I have got a little rule of thumb that I developed a long time ago, and you might find it useful as well. And that is, as capacity, allowable capacity, or whatever capacity on the gun goes down, the power of the cartridge needs to go up. And that's just basic, simple math. If you cannot have a lot of rounds to bring to bear on your threat, the least you can do is have rounds that have a lot of power to them so that each and every one has the potential to make a more decisive impact on the threat. There is that upper end of controllability that we have to deal with. So you don't want something that's so powerful that you personally can't shoot it well under rapid fire. For today's discussion, I'm going to break this down into 3 easy to digest categories of gun. First, single stack semi-automatics, double stack semi-automatics, and revolvers. Now, I'm curious though, do any of you out there live in a magazine capacity cap state? And if so, how do you deal with it? What are you doing? What are you carrying? And basically, how do you deal with it? Go in the comments, let us know about it. Also, while you're at it, please share the video. We'd appreciate that. All right, category 1, single stack semi-automatics. Frankly, I think probably your best bet in this whole category would be a 1911. And yeah, if you don't like 1911s, I'll give you some alternatives. But the 1911 and 1911 fanboys are going, yay! He said our gun. Woo! We are somebody. I love teasing you folks out there. Sorry about that, but anyway, you make it easy though. What can I say? You're just so reactive. My comments, if I've got 1911 videos or whatever, the comments are just overflowing all the time, which I appreciate. Thank you for doing all that. But let's talk about the 1911 and why it is a good choice. First of all, it's designed as a single stack, and no, I'm not going to talk these stupid 2011s. That's a whole different subject, a whole different video. Don't get me started. Now, the 1911, it was originally designed as a single stack. It is a good gun. It is reliable if you get a good one and you know how to take care of it. But more importantly, it comes in 2 really good flavors, 45 ACP and 10 millimeter. Now, 45 ACP is debatable as to whether or not it's, superior to 9mm, but it is making a larger wound track, and there's a lot of advantages to that. And if you can't have the capacity, then let's have, make a fairly large wound track, a wide wound track if we can. And of course 10 millimeter, can't say enough about 10 millimeter. And you can get this loaded in various levels of power. Basically either the FBI load, which is about a 180 grain at about 950 feet per second, 1,000 feet per second, or you can get the full house stuff. I would recommend a 170 to 180 grain, somewhere in there. The 200 grain, while it is the classic 10 millimeter load, is sometimes a little much for penetration and over penetration, stuff like that. That's at least according to the research we've done so far on 10 millimeter loads. But it's a great load because in a 1911 platform, it will give you one more round in the magazine than the 45 ACP without going over these capacity limits. The nominal magazine capacity for a 45 1911 is 7 rounds. That was the original, but there are 8-round magazines out there from various places, Chip McCormick, Wilson Combat, whatever. And they work pretty well. Now the 10 rounders, A, they're really difficult to conceal, and B, because they stick out so far, and B, they're noted as not being terribly reliable. So I would avoid the 10 rounders. However, so you can get an 8-round 45, but you can get a 9-round 10 millimeter. So with one in the pipe, there's 10 rounds. And if you have a 10-round capacity limit in where you're at, then there you go. You're up to capacity and you've got great horsepower. Plus, in a 1911 all-steel full-size gun, which is the way they make 10 millimeters, it's pretty controllable. It's a good load. You can definitely keep a handle on this if you have good shooting technique and you just practice with the thing a little bit. It's a superb choice. All right, you say, hey, I don't want a 1911. I don't like them. I can't use them. Whatever it is, they're too heavy, too big, whatever. And also, or I prefer 9 millimeter, which is fine. 9 millimeter with the proper ammunition. It's a really good cartridge. Does a good job. And it's controllable for most people. But you have to stay in that single stack. So what are your choices? And oddly enough, there's not a ton of single stack 9 millimeters out there. My recommendation would be the SIG, and it's kind of the redheaded stepchild in the SIG lineup, but it's their P239. It's an excellent little gun. It's about the size of a Glock 19, a little thinner in the grip than that because it's single stack. So it's concealable and carryable, but it's a good enough size that you can shoot accurately with, and it's got enough weight to dampen the recoil. Now the P239 is of course old school with a double action, single action trigger and a hammer to fire the thing. If you're a single stack person, probably I would gravitate towards the Glock 43X or the Glock 48. Those are their single stack 9 millimeters, and they're both either a subcompact or a compact size. So they're good sizes, and they're good guns. They're Glock obviously, so they're reliable, etc. Not shilling for Glock, just saying. Everybody knows they're pretty reliable. Can they jam? Yeah, sure. I've seen them jam in gunfight videos. If you don't take care of them, or you have crappy ammo, or bad technique, they're going to gum up just like any other mechanical device. But overall, you're probably in pretty good shape with that. Plus, it's single stack. They're very thin, very easy to carry, very comfortable carry. All right, let's talk double stack semi-autos. And you're going to be in 9 millimeter territory here, basically, because of the fact that, double stack 45s, they're really big guns. And I really can't, I think there's a few of them out there that have 10-round mags. You'd have to double, check around and stuff. But for the most part, though, I would say for double stack, you're talking 9 millimeter, and I think you have basically two good choices. If you want a subcompact, I would go with the Glock 26, the G26. It's the original micro compact, if you will, what they call micro. Back in the day, they were called a subcompact. At any rate, it's probably your best choice overall because it comes from the factory with a 10-round magazine. So you're going to be right at the limit for those states that are at 10 rounds. Now, there are other subcompacts and micros out there, and you can look at those as long as they have the capacity, but like the Hellcat from Springfield, that's 11 rounds in the mag. So you're, going to be out of luck if you're in the wrong jurisdiction. You don't want to get jammed up on the, for the sake of one round in the magazine. That's silly. And if you're a SIG Striker fan, which I'm not really enthused about, I love SIG, but I don't really like their striker fired stuff. But if you insist on that, the 365, if I recall, came with, or still does come with 10-round magazines. So you can go that route as well. But these guns are super small, and they can be kind of hard to hang on to. So let's look at something that's a little more rational for size. Now, the Springfield XD, the original XD, is still available in a compliant 10-round version that comes shipped with a 10-round magazine and it should be perfectly good. And as far as I know, the last time I looked into it, it's on the approved California list. Now, that's another thing we need to mention as far as your choices of gun. The things that I'm putting out here, if they're not on an approved list in your jurisdiction, well, then you got to go with whatever's on the approved list. It's just that simple. But that XD is out there, and that's why they still keep it in the catalog at Springfield, because it is compliant in a lot of magazine capacity cap states. Now we come to the third category, which is, in my opinion, it's my favorite for if I had to live in, thankfully I don't live in one of these jurisdictions, but if I did, the revolver makes a lot of sense here. Yeah, it's a little down on capacity. If you are legally able to go to 10 rounds, you should go to 10 rounds if you can't, unless for a variety of reasons you don't want a semi-automatic. If you want something that's just really simple and really straightforward, double action revolver is the way to go. And they do make them now. Smith & Wesson, Ruger have versions that have 7 rounds in the cylinder, as far as like in a 357 or 38 platform. But for the most part, you're going to get a 6 round. So my recommendation would be a medium frame revolver. I'm going to give you 2 recommendations. First one would be a medium frame revolver. We're talking anything from Colt, Smith & Wesson, Ruger, any of these manufacturers, top line manufacturers. You're going to get a good gun. And you remember, as capacity goes down, power needs to go up. Well, 357 is the way to go on this. It is still the king for one-shot stops out there. At least the last time I checked Evan Marshall's statistics, it's still leading. The other things are coming up on its heels pretty quick with modern ammunition, but that 357, if you do your job, it'll definitely do its job. And it's going to give you a lot of power, but in a medium frame revolver, such as, Smith & Wesson Model 65, let's just pick one of those off the top of my head. It's a fairly heavy revolver. It's not too heavy to carry, but it's heavy enough that it will dampen the recoil. And with the proper grips and good technique, these guns are super shootable by most people, and it's not difficult to get your head around using a 357. And these guns point so well. They're natural, instinctive pointing guns, which is just what you need in a fight where things are happening really fast, because using the sights and stuff like that kind of starts to go out to the edges real quick with most people, because you're fighting for your life, and you're going to be on muscle memory and not as much as your prefrontal cortex. You should hopefully still be able to think during this situation, but a lot of people can't. So it comes down to instinctively taking care of the threat, and a revolver is a superb instinctive pointing weapon. And of course, with 357, if for some reason you don't like the recoil of the 357, you can put plus P38s in there. Still relatively effective, and the recoil in the medium frame revolver, very mild. Now, the other choice in revolver would be a big bore. Go with the big dog. If you need power, that big bore revolver is going to give you the power. Now, with a big bore revolver, you have to use a little common sense, because these guns are available in tremendously powerful cartridges, starting at, say, 44 Magnum on up. You can get some real power in these things. However, controllability becomes a significant issue at that power level, and also 44 Magnum, even with a defensive-oriented load, one that's supposedly for defense, those can give you substantial risk of overpenetration, so you have to be really careful here. My recommendation would be either 41 Magnum or 44 Special. And you can get a 44 Mag gun and just run the specials in it. 44 Special, terrific cartridge. Ballistics are very similar to a 45 ACP, and the recoil from a 44 Special in a large frame revolver, very mild. It's almost like shooting a 22 or 9mm in a full-size handgun or something like that. So very controllable and still very effective. And then 41 Magnum, even at the upper end of the load spectrum, not these heavy bare load, super things that are off the chart, but your standard 210 grain load, or preferably about a 175 grain. In fact, that 175 grain silver tip is probably the best load for 41 Mag. Another thing you might want to consider, especially if you do carry a revolver, as long as your jurisdiction does not prohibit it, consider carrying a backup gun or a second revolver. The old New York reload is usually much faster than using speed loaders, and certainly faster than speed strips or just plunking the rounds in 1 or 2 at a time manually. Well, there you go. That's my recommendation for 7 handguns that would be good choices if you are unfortunate enough to have to live in a state which limits your ammo capacity in your defensive handgun. Thanks for joining us today at LocaCarnivore. We really appreciate it. We know your time is valuable. And remember, always insist upon facts. Thanks for watching. If you live in a if you live in a state with a handgun ban, no.